Hey guys, welcome to Amity Tracks, and welcome to the final episode of our King Crimson week. If you missed the first one, we earlier this week we went through and kind of talked about the history of King Crimson, and then went through all of their studio albums. And at the very end, I ranked them because that's what we do. We like to rank things. But I promised this episode was going to be everything else. And man, this is complicated, but I think I've boiled it down to something pretty understandable for us all, including me, because the Crimson World, the King Crimson World, is way more. Some would say the studio records are almost like a side thing, and because there's all this other stuff. And I guess we'll start with in the live arena. There, I counted. I don't know, went on Wikipedia, whatever, and I looked at all the discographies and everything, and other sources. I basically counted at least 75 live King Crimson albums that you can get. A lot of them are kind of mail order directly from their DMG, whatever it is, that company that they use. But you can get a lot of them on Amazon or wherever. But yeah, at least 75 live King Crimson albums. And then most of those are double disc or triple disc. Yeah, I mean, there is so much live material out there. Am I gonna go through all set? No, I'm not. I don't have them all, and that would be like a 5-hour video. So, no. What I have done, one, I don't own them all. I'm not. I am a Neil Young completist, as you saw, but I'm not a King Crimson completist. That's just way too much. What I have done though, is, if you go and watch the earlier video, you saw how King Crimson has very distinct eras and time periods and lineups. So I tried to find at least one or two like definitive live shows from each of those kind of lineup / eras. And that's kind of what I have. So I was going to show you those. So no, I'm not going to go through all 75. I guess we should start with kind of the official live albums, as in the live albums that were sort of released, you know, at the time as these studio records were happening, and that I only count 3 of those. I might be off. It's a hazy line of what's official and what's special, archival, and whatever. It's a hazy line, but there's at least a couple here that are, I think, obvious because they did come out at the time, in the chronology. So 1972 was their actual first live album, which is EarthBound. This has a horrible reputation. I mean, a really bad reputation. One, it was poorly recorded. I mean, it sounds like a bootleg, basically. It doesn't have great sound. It was recorded by the lineup that recorded the Islands album, which, if you saw my rankings, you saw where I put Islands pretty low in the rankings. And there was a ton of discord in the group. I mean, this was what they put out right before they broke up, after that first era. And, with Fripp, this has a Robert Fripp, Mel Collins, Boz Burrell, and Ian Wallace lineup. And you can kind of hear, I told you on the album Islands, Robert Fripp kind of won out and made it, more, kind of proggy. Here, you hear the other guys kind of winning out because they just wanted to rock out. And so this is sort of just kind of some of that, but it's still, it's still King Crimson, right? So yeah, it actually says here the recordings were captured live on an Ampex stereo cassette. Yeah, I mean although I don't know, I think in its sort of brutal, basic way that this does kind of rock though. It's kind of cool. The next official live album that's held in much higher esteem is 1975's USA, and this was recorded or released in 75. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just looking on the back here. says R.I.P. like rip, like rest in peace. I'm just remembering. I think Robert Fripp put that on there because he thought this was the final like goodbye for Crimson. The second time they broke up, right? But it's got that David Cross, Robert Fripp, John Wetton, Bill Bruford lineup, which is, for many people consider the greatest King Crimson lineup, or at least those three guys. I mean David Cross too, but at least Fripp, Wetton, and Bruford together were something special. This is really great. It's really great. I think it's too short. Um, I have heard the shows that they took some of these performances from. You can get the whole shows, and I think those have kind of supplanted this. But at the time, this was all that was out there, so it was pretty great if you wanted live Crimson. And that's it. I've got one more, but one more like way far ahead. Uh, I've got a lot of live stuff to show you from these times in between, but it's it's all from their archival releases and stuff. So one other kind of official release, and that would be 2016 from the Elements tour. Although 2016 says 2000, I don't know, maybe it was released in 16, but anyway, it says it's from the 2014 tour. This is nice to have because it's kind of that final incarnation of King Crimson, which was 7, or depending on between around 2011 or so, I think, and about 2019, 2020, or is it 2021? Anyway, that last decade or so, well, I saw them 2017. Was this final kind of really interesting incarnation, which was this mix of obviously Robert Fripp is there, but Tony Levin is here. Mel Collins from the earlier days is here, and then some newer guys that came in. So it's kind of a mix of eras, and they had created some new material, but it was mostly sort of revisiting all eras of Crimson in kind of exciting and pretty awesome ways. Gavin Harrison, the amazing drummer, is here. I cannot say his name. Jacko Jaksic. Just call him Jacko or Jacko. Jakko. Great guitar player and singer, and he kind of took over the vocals for this last decade or so, and really great musician in his own right. But yeah, this is kind of a nice one record sampler of sort of that later sound. But again, they have kind of put out these archival stuff from these last 10 years that are better than this. All right. From here on out, it's CDs. Okay. So let me just move these discs over here so I have easier access to them. All right. Let's go through these. So I'm going to go in chronological order. And like I said, I've kind of picked what I think are really great representations from each era that I would recommend to you guys. Epitaph. Now I have this just on a burned CD copy, but the editor can throw up what the cover art looked like. But it was called Epitaph, and that's probably the best way to capture that original like 1969 lineup, with Greg Lake and all that. The sound quality isn't the best. I guess sometimes it sounds like just like a good bootleg, but you got to consider the time period and everything. But yeah, if you want to kind of capture that sound. Moving on, Ladies of the Road, which is great. So this was live 1971 to 72, and this it kind of goes through that Islands era, and I think a much better sounding and better representation of that, the group that was on EarthBound, and it sounds a lot better too. So there's that. Just put them over here. This next one, The Night Watch from 1973, is this is a must-have, I think. I mean, this has that. I think Jamie Muir's already out, but it's got that Fripp, Bruford, Wetton, Cross lineup. And this was actually, I think, where a lot of the stuff that ended up on um, Starless and Bible Black, where they put a lot of some of that live improv stuff came from this, so you kind of have the original source of that. Plus, like Easy, this great version of Easy Money on there. Anyway, this is a must-have from, like I've said before, what many consider to be the best lineup. It's not my favorite lineup. It's probably my second favorite lineup, but it's astounding stuff. Yeah. So the Night Watch live at Amsterdam, November 23rd, 1973. All right. Next, moving ahead here, going all the way up to 1984. I have told you all that my personal favorite lineup is that 80s lineup, that quartet, Robert Fripp, Adrian Belew, Tony Levin, and Bill Bruford. This, to me, this is absolutely essential. This is Absent Lovers live in Montreal, 1984. It really is this culmination and kind of wraps up that 80s lineup. I believe, if I remember right, this might have been the last show of that 80s quartet before they kind of ended. Two discs, and it's just they take all those great songs from those three, that trio of records from the 80s that I love so much, Discipline, Beat, Three of a Perfect Pair, and just crank it up a notch in complexity and improvisation, and just killer versions of these songs. Yeah, I five-star collection for me. An essential live album for me is Absent Lovers, which captures that 80s Crimson group. All right, moving ahead here to 1994, Ba-Boom, official bootleg, live in Argentina, 1994. So this was when the double trio, which were gearing up, and of course Thrack would come out the next year. This is when they were kind of getting together and putting some of this stuff together. So some of those songs that ended up on Thrack are on here. Also, they take some of the great 80s stuff and sort of, rework it for this double trio lineup. It's pretty good. I mean, it just rocks hard like this era did, but it's pretty good. I don't know where my cover on this one was, but this is King Crimson, live in London, 1996. So kind of right after that, it's still that same trio. Like I said, I don't know where my cover is. It's a double disc, but that double trio. But after 2 more years of kind of working together and playing together, they've got developed a different sound. All right, so here is where I'll tell you what. I'm going to skip this for now because this is where we get to the time of the ProjeKcts. That's going to be a separate discussion. Let's kind of keep going with these regular live albums. Here, moving up to 2000, so that final quartet of Fripp, Belew, Gunn, and Mastelotto. This is live in Warsaw, Poland, 2000. So yeah, if you want to, not my favorite lineup or era, but if you want a good sampler of what they sounded like live, this is good. This is good. Now, the past 10 years, this sometimes they were a 7-piece, sometimes they were an 8-piece. I've got 3 great samplers from kind of the last 7 years. This where they have had 3 drummers, 3 drummers, and sometimes Gavin Harrison, I think, has been there pretty much the whole time, but then some of the other guys, Pat Mastelotto, no, Mastelotto wasn't. No, he wasn't part of this, I don't think. Anyway, they've had some other guys come in and out in those drum slots, but and again, I saw them live in this era. It's like 2017. I saw them in Austin. One of the great shows of my life. It was so amazing. But where they have this lineup of 3 drummers up front, and then on the kind of this tier, this riser behind them is the rest of the band. Fripp and Jacko and Tony Levin, Mel Collins, whoever else they would have with them from time to time. But those are the main 4 that would be in that back lineup. And I have live in Toronto here. So you can see kind of a picture on the cover here of like all the drummers. 2015. Then I have Chicago, 2017. And then also from 2017, Meltdown live in Mexico. This set here, which came with a DVD, so you can kind of see the show too, which is cool. Out of all of these, I want to pay special attention to Live in Chicago. This is a 5-star collection for me. This is incredible. To me, out of all this stuff I've heard from this like last decade of this particular kind of lineup, well, they've had a few people come in and out of it, but this 7 to 8 piece where they were really kind of going back and playing stuff from all the eras. This is the best one I've heard. Is it Live in Chicago? To me, this is stunning. 5 stars, incredible. And I love it because it's very representative of what I heard in Austin. That this was June of 2017, and I saw them in Austin. Well, it's on the back of my T-shirt, but I can't read the back of my shirt. It was like August or something. It's like a couple months after this. And so this was basically the set list that I heard in Austin. 1 or 2 changes, but mostly this was the set list. Although on here they do a great version of David Bowie's Heroes, which they didn't do in Austin. As you know, Robert Fripp played that iconic guitar line on Bowie's Heroes. So King Crimson in the last few years have sort of thrown that into their set list, which is pretty great. But yeah, I mean, it is so great because they really do pull from all eras and just do an astounding job. Lark's Tongues and Aspic Part 1, which kind of opens it, I think just blows me away. That is incredible. This whole thing, though, man. Easy Money is so great. The Lizard Suite, Resurrecting the Lizard. Oh man, yeah. It's just I as far as musicianship, it doesn't get much better than this. Live in Chicago. You can buy it online or whatever. Okay, let's talk about these side projects here. Oh, I didn't show this. Level 5. This is an EP from. When does this come out? I think it was leading up to the Construction of Light. I think pretty brutal stuff. I don't know. I didn't know where to put that, so there it is. But let's talk about these side projects. So here's a story on these projects. In the mid to late 90s, Robert Fripp decided that they should do these to prepare for the next phase of King Crimson. Do these side projects. There's Project 1, Project 2, Project 3, Project 4. I know there's a Project 10. There was supposed to be some other numbers. I don't know. It didn't quite come to full fruition, but they did do some of these projects. And what they was these, just, from that double trio with those six guys, different combinations of them would get together and be a different project. And they would go to clubs and play live and sort of work on this improvisation stuff. And it was hit and miss, but when it hit, they really got some pretty amazing stuff. I think it's almost all instrumental too. I mean, they weren't like vocals, like full songs per se, like improvisational kind of instrumental. Some of it very ambient, some of it very like, hard hitting and everything in between. But some fascinating stuff. If you want a sampler, there is a beginner's guide to the projects, Deception of the Thrush, and where they do kind of give you 1 or 2 tracks from each of these projects, except for Project 10's not on there, but 1 through 4 are on there. It's actually a nice sampler. I started with this, but then like I was so intrigued by it, I was like, I really want to explore more, so I did. Here's a great one-stop. This box set, it's on CD. The projects, 4 CDs in here, and 1 CD each. Project 1, Project 2, Project 3, Project 4. So you've got project here. I got my notes here. Project 1, which is Robert Fripp, Tony Levin, Trey Gunn, and Bill Bruford here. And then you got Project 2, which is Robert Fripp, Adrian Belew playing drums, these touch drums. So he isn't playing guitar or singing like he usually does. And Trey Gunn, that's a trio here on Live Groove. And these guys got on so well that they actually recorded a double studio album called Space Groove, which is pretty cool too. And then let's see, Project 3. This is Mask. And Project 3 comprised of Robert Fripp, Trey Gunn, and Mastalotto. Drawing a blank on his first. Pat Mastalotto. There you go. So that's them. Most of this stuff is live. Almost all of it's live, other than that Space Groove thing. Project 4, West Coast Live, was Robert Fripp, Trey Gunn, Adrian Ballou, and Pat Mastalotto. There you go. And it's all. I dove headfirst into it. I kind of loved it. I mean, it's it's not for everybody. It's a lot of noodling, a lot of exploration, but I found a lot of worth in it. Now there wasn't Project 10, which I don't have, but that one track, Heaven and Earth, which ends up on Reconstruction of Light, is amazing from it. But I've listened to some of it, and the rest of it isn't nearly that good. So, oh well. I do want to point this one out. This is called A Scarcity of Miracles, and this came out 2011. And it's Jacko. Sorry, I keep brutalizing his last name, but you spell it like Jakszzyk. I don't know how to say that. Jakczyk. Robert Fripp, Mel Collins, with guests Tony Levin and Gavin Harrison. So most of this final decade or so's lineup of King Crimson, maybe this is the closest to an actual studio King Crimson album from that era. You know, because you got 5 guys from that lineup on here. It's a bit mellower, but really beautiful stuff on here. You know, but songs, actual songs with lyrics and vocals and verses and choruses and stuff. You know, so it's actually got songs on it. The title track, "Scarcity of Miracles," is pretty beautiful. I mean, this whole thing actually is really nice, but it's Robert Fripp kind of, I think, considered making it a Crimson album, but I think because it was so kind of quieter and mellow, and it's like, you know, not quite Crimson. It's kind of this other little side thing. So there's something to mention there. All right, real quick on compilations. I mean, as you might have gathered from how complex Crimson is, it's hard to capture them on a sort of a definitive compilation. You know, there's the Young Man's Guide, there's all of that. I just think all the comps I've seen really kind of miss some crucial things. It's just hard to capture. I did mention I started, so that's a good way to end this week. I started talking about this week in the intro to the first video. I bought those. They were 4 CDs each, so it'd be 8 CDs total. The 21st Century Guide to King Crimson, Volume 1, Volume 2. Volume 1 goes, you know, from the beginning through the mid 70s, and then Volume 2, the 80s, starts with the 80s era to the early 2000s, right? So it covers all the studio record era, at least. Just doesn't cover this last decade or so of this intensive touring they've been doing. And 4 CDs of those. So in each set, it's kind of cool. 2 CDs are studio, 2 CDs are live. And then, you know, the next set, same deal. So you get, you know, kind of 4 discs of live sampling, and then 4 discs of kind of like a 4-disc studio thing. Even with that, though, it's not definitive. I thought Frame by Frame was good. This was a 4 CD set that covered everything up through the 80s era, I believe. It's called Frame by Frame, The Essential King Crimson. And this 21st Century Guide to King Crimson was put out to replace Frame by Frame, you know, to, you know, add that last era from the 90s and the early 2000s into it. So, but I just, it's so complex. I mean, you can't really capture them on a good comp unless it's, you know, like a box set or something. But the 21st Century Guide is pretty good. If you you're dealing with 8 CDs, and at that point, just dive into the real stuff. I don't know. So, there you go, guys. King Crimson. In the comments, what do you guys think? Crimson fans out there, or even if you're just casual, you know what? I forgot to even say in the end of the last video, what are your rankings? But what are your rankings of their albums? What do you think? What's your favorite era? What's your favorite stuff? Let's talk King Crimson. Please do subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. Hit the bell for notifications. Hit the like button on these videos. All that helps us out, and because we love doing this stuff, and we love having a community here. It's been growing. We've been real happy with it. And that's due to you guys. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on Amity Tracks.